I made this nice buttery build earlier, and I was going to share it with you guys, but I don't think I should be spreading it. What's going on, YouTube? One of the most common issues that an Elder Scrolls Online player faces is they get a build and they don't like it, or they made a build and they are struggling to utilize it in the proper way, in the sense that it doesn't seem to be firing correctly. They've copied the sets, they've copied the Munduses, they've copied the champion points, and yet they're finding themselves in a situation where, unfortunately, it seems as though something is not working. Today we're going to talk about how you could troubleshoot, fix those problems, and change builds and make them work for you. Whether that's a PvP build, a PvE build, a solo build, or something in between. And as we jump into it, just a quick reminder, we are 10 subscribers away from our next subscriber goal, so now, let us talk about how to fix your builds when it comes to the Elder Scrolls Online. And also, just to remember too, there's nothing wrong with this. I troubleshoot my own builds all the time. For those of you who don't know, I'm making my Stam Sorc right now, and we have completely changed the sets that we've been running. You can see the sets that I just have in my inventory. We've gone through and tested quite a few different things. There's nothing wrong with testing, editing, changing Munduses, traits, sets, attribute points, and that's why, as we go through today, just as a reminder, there's nothing wrong with making some tweaks. But how do you do this? How do you fix your builds? And the very first thing that you need to do is identify the problem with the build. It might not be hitting hard enough. It might have a lack of survivability. It might be really too difficult to pilot. All of those are reasons that something might be a problem. The very first thing that I do whenever I've identified a problem is I ask myself, what's causing the problem? For example, I love Clever Alchemist as a set. I use it on my Green Goblin build. I think it's a fantastic set. It allows you to back bar it, but oftentimes I'm accidentally not getting a lot of value out of it. Why am I not getting a lot of value out of it? Because I'm drinking potions on my front bar where Clever Alchemist is not active. It's only active as a 3-piece because I need to be on my back bar to get the full 5-piece. Meaning that essentially I'm getting zero value out of drinking my potions until I've waited the whole time period to go through the entirety of the potion cooldown, and then I have to remember that I need to be on my back bar with a full 5-piece set is active, and I need to be in combat, because sometimes I'm missing procs and Qs and things from it because I'm not in combat when it's going off, which is its own set of problems. So I've identified the problem. Next up is relatively straightforward. You just have to ask yourself, what needs to change? Now, this is a pretty interesting question that you have to ask yourself that's going to span all types of content. For example, my friend Travis likes to wear PvE sets that require him to light attack. Oftentimes, I don't see Travis light attacking. So you may ask yourself, do I need to change? Do I need to get better at doing specific types of things? Like, for example, in PvE, or PvP, excuse me, do I need to get better at blocking line of sight? Do I need to get better at roll dodging, blocking? If it's PvE, am I proccing my sets correctly? Do I need to change those sets just because I'm struggling to do light, heavy attack weaving? Is there something better out there for me? Am I having a sustain problem? Do I need to change something regarding my sustain? Do I need to change my potions? Those are all things that you can look at as potential ways to fix your problem, but you first have to identify the cause of the problem, then you need to isolate what needs to change. And the easiest way to do that is think about what's working. For example, let's say you're running Zons, and you're consistently getting your Zons proc. Well, you probably don't need to worry about changing that. Or if you're me, and you're running the Green Goblin build, you're not getting your Clever Alchemist proc, but you are getting your Vicious Death proc. So I'm like, okay, I'm still getting executes, I'm still being the cause of death, because Vicious Death could be its own problem. If you're not getting the final hit on players, you're not going to get the actual explosion from them, you're not going to be getting any value from Vicious Death. So you always want to make sure that you're the one getting value from that. So the actual issue itself could be from a wide sweeping range of different types of issues that will depend on you. So now that you've seen what's causing the problem and what needs to change, now we can move on to the next step. And this next topic is going to be changes. When you think about changes, you always want to remember that A, you do not need to copy everything that another creator, individual, best friend, your friend David, you don't have to copy what they're doing. Every Elder Scrolls Online experience is going to be slightly different. And if you're me, your changes actually also include looking at your controller. For example, I use these two buttons down here to be my LB and my RB And I use my right thumbstick to be my bar swap. That way I can easily bar swap inside of content. So your changes can be a wide sweeping range of things. Potions, race, sets, champion points, Mundus stones, attribute points. It could be your enchantments. It could be poisons. And I know all that sounds daunting, but I promise the beautiful thing about that is as crazy as it sounds, there's really not too many things that you can change, but we're going to go in kind of order of things that I would suggest for you to change first, and then as you kind of go through and try different things, then we start getting to more significant changes. The very first thing in this category is actually going to be exceptionally straightforward because it's playstyle and practice. For example, if I'm running Clever Alchemist, I need to get better at recognizing what bar I'm on. Some of the changes that I implemented with this is that I'm running 2 staffs on that character, and I make sure that the staff is actually very noticeable when I'm on my back bar. So it's like a big, beefy staff that's like, Jake, you're on your back bar. Because oftentimes I'm forgetting and I'm only looking at my opponents. I'm only looking forward. Some other really good changes is making sure you're zoomed out as far as possible on your character. But playstyle and practice can be anything. If you're in PvP, there's very few times where death could be easily preventable for some of the more common PvP deaths. Bombs, Rush of Agonies, chain pulls. There are times where you're just going to die, and it's going to happen. Looking at your actual set, though, is going to be well, how much of this is caused by my set versus how much of this was just caused by, general shenanigans that existed in the world. So, all of that to say, you can change, how your button layouts are. You can change, your actual way that you utilize the build, being a little bit more cognizant of different things, making sure that you know a little bit better when you're on your back bar versus your front bar, so you know when you can proc and do different things, making sure that you're looking for visual cues, looking at different add-ons to make, giving yourself reminders for PvE content. Those are some changes that I would encourage you to do immediately because they also generally don't require anything different. This next one is a bit near and dear to my heart because it's Mundus Stone. So when Maelstrom Arena first came out, it was pretty difficult for players. The mechanics were very different than a lot of the dungeons we had. It required you to be solo. It kind of made you need to build in a very unique way. Well, I was using a very old build. It was probably something like Bloodspawn, Medusa, Mother Sorrow, right? So something very generic, just tons of crit damage. Back in the day, that was the bee's knees, as the kids say. And I was dying because I was very squishy. Well, the only thing that I changed when I went into there is instead of running the Shadow Mundus, I just gave myself the max health Mundus. And that small difference allowed me to clear Veteran Maelstrom Arena with just a little bit more, junk in the trunk, a little bit more thickness to get through different things. And for PvP especially, and solo content, this is a great thing to look at because it's an impactful change and it's very quick. And especially if you're a solo player or PvE player, you're probably running a lot of divines, so your pieces that affect your Mundus are pretty impactful, meaning that if you change to the max health or weapon and spell or crit damage or crit chance or penetration, you're going to see quite a bit of value from that change just by literally clicking A over a stone that you can find in a guild house. And then you don't have to go get a new set. You don't have to buy new consumables. You can test this out. Point of fact, too, I did this yesterday. I was running a crit damage Mundus, and I said to myself, I've noticed a lot of people, it feels like, are running a lot of crit resistance because of the popularity of the monomyth. So I just switched to the penetration Mundus, and I noticed that I was getting more value on damage to players. So switching your Mundus Stone is a very easy, quick way to change and edit those builds. Next up is going to be consumables. Consumables can be an easy change, but changing from things like Bewitched Sugar Skulls to Orzogs is a pretty impactful change. Witch Mother's Brew is very different as a value versus Bewitched Sugar Skulls, which are all giving you different things. When it comes to changing consumables too, you can also think potions. Now, generally, when it comes to potions, I recommend for PvP people run Tri-Stat. You can also run things like weapon and spell power pots, the ones that you can purchase with alliance points. You can also run heroism, movability potions. I would experiment with these, but also remember too, when you look at changes like this, you have to go back to, you're in box number 2. You got to think about box number 1. For example, what's causing my problem is my inability to keep my sets procced. So for me, my problem is not going to be fixed by consumables. My problem is more so in the A category, but that doesn't mean that you can't always think, hey, since I'm getting better value out of my, potions here, maybe I could start running some better potions that give me better value. Maybe I don't need all these recoveries because I have, the siphoning passives. So overall, it's something that you can consider, but also too, just remember that as we go through things in box number 2, you always have to go back to box number 1. Because that's going to determine what's going to be a successful change for you. Another thing that you can look to do is actually change your skills. Now, what's beautiful about skills is this also includes scribable skills. So if you're in a situation like me where you like to use some scribable skills, you can use this to identify problems. For example, I love me some heroism. So if I can use an ability to give me heroism pretty consistently, that's going to solve a lot of my problems. If my problem is that I need additional recoveries, for example, I can give myself major and minor intellect, increasing my magicka and stamina recovery. If I find myself in a situation where I need to feel a little bit more protected on my back bar, I can use revealing flare to give myself major protection, and I can use undo to give myself minor protection. These are all just small little tweaks and things that you can do with skills to kind of give yourself a better back bar, better front bar, and give yourself some unique buffs. So if you're finding yourself in a situation where you want more ultimate, you need more recovery, and that's the problem that you've identified, you can use your skills to help you achieve that goal. And I'm also going to be opening this up as a full YouTube series where you guys send me your builds. I tell you some tweaks that are personalized to you, and we're going to be doing it based on, you can send me footage, you can send me screenshots of your outlooks and different, builds that you have and how things are going, and then we can kind of talk more about specifics to you, because this unfortunately is going to be very generalized. We don't have time to go through every single skill line in the entirety of ESO, but you can always use skills to affect how combat is going to be for you. The next one is attributes. Now, attributes are relatively straightforward because to me, if you're in a situation, especially for PvP or solo, you're going to know if this is the problem, because you're going to be in a situation where you're like, Jake, I am constantly getting targeted. Well, if they see that you have low health, they're assuming that either A, you're a glass cannon build, or B, you're new to PvP, and neither of those two things are going to bode well for you. So the more health you have, the general assumption is going to be, hey, this guy is probably a little bit more bulky. I'm going to perhaps focus my attacks initially on somebody else. So sometimes attributes, especially for those two types of content, can be helpful. Again, loop it back to the problem. If your problem is not that you're, having enough health or too little health, you don't have to worry about attributes. Next up is race. Now, race is a different one to talk about because each race is so vastly different. And honestly, when it comes to having a goal for a build, changing your race is a bit like changing your Mundus, which might sound crazy on the surface, but if you think about it, a lot of the bonuses that separate the races are all seen in different Mundus Stone versions. For example, whether or not you get a little bit of extra resistance versus a bunch of maximum health, stamina versus magicka, maybe a little bit of cost reduction, maybe some crit damage if you're a Khajiit, you're really not a whole lot different than a Mundus Stone. So I generally rarely encourage people to change their race because it's usually a paid feature, but it is something that you can consider, but I generally think it would have to be very specific to a situation. For example, if I was trying to, let's say, make a bomber build and I was just so close to getting kills and I was on, let's say I'm using a Breton, for example, because I love Bretons. I'd go, you know what, Jake, maybe I need to switch to a Khajiit, get a bunch of little crit damage going. Maybe that's going to be the thing that takes me over the top, because my assumption is if I'm having this quandary about building a bomber, Jake probably already has and used, all of the correct sets and consumables. I've changed everything else. I've got the Shadow Mundus. I just need just a little bit more damage, and that's probably when I would change to a Khajiit. But again, loop everything back to the problem. Next up is champion points. I generally don't put as much thought into champion points as some people do, because usually it's relatively straightforward. Single target damage if you're doing single target damage. AoE damage if you're doing AoE. But there are some situations where I think that you can, for example, utilize champion points. For example, I think Slippery is highly underrated depending on the type of build that you're doing. Oftentimes people find themselves where getting knocked down is going to be an insta-kill for their character. So utilizing a champion point like this can be the difference between life and death. But again, if that's the problem, that is definitely a solution that you can look into. But most of the time, your champion points are probably going to be pretty static based on the build that you're using. And now we can finally discuss sets. Now, if you're in a situation where a set is not working for you, this should be very close to the bottom of your problems list. But sets can be a pretty impactful change just based on the nature of how powerful they are. Now, in a situation where you're like me and you're like, Clever Alchemist is not working for me, what generally would I do in that situation? Well, normally what I do is I look for something very similar. And for me, a very similar set that I probably could get a lot of value of is going to be Rallying Cry. Now, Rallying Cry would be a really good alternative to something, similar to Clever Alchemist for me, because my back bar is already my please don't die, Jacob. We're trying to, survive here in this battleground or Cyrodiil, and I'm going to be critically healing myself, and therefore I could be giving myself some good crit resistant weapon and spell damage with good uptime. So to me, Rallying Cry could be a very good alternative. And I wish there was a better system for me to tell you what sets to use. That's why I'm very excited to make this into a series. But oftentimes I just find myself searching best PvP sets for blank and then seeing what comes up, because I find myself in a situation where I just want to experiment and see what other people are thinking when it comes to some sort of issue. I will recommend Malcolm is a great resource to utilize for this, and then if you find somebody who's talking about different sets, you could start to see which set is going to be a really good alternative for me. For example, this one is excellent front bar damage set up for status, effect, and proc builds. You can see what it does. This one increases your damage done by 330, but it just reduces your healing received, meaning that you could just have this as a front bar set and still get tons of value of it on the back bar by not having it fully active, then therefore you're not going to be harming yourself. And so you can look at these as different alternatives and things to utilize. But again, when you look at these sets, start to think to yourself, what of these is going to be something that I'm going to get a lot of value from? For example, when you deal damage to an enemy who's off balance, you increase your offensive penetration by 5312 for 10 seconds. And it's got a 2, 3, and 4 of weapon and spell and offensive penetration. I think Stoon's Favor with subclassing is a highly underrated set. And I think a lot more people should be running it because penetration is very helpful in this current meta. And this could be a really good alternative for you to look at. But it's going to depend again on what your problem is. This could be anything from PvE to PvP, which is important to remember because your problem is going to depend on what's going on for you. If it's the fact that you're not proccing certain sets, look up the best ESO PvE sets in the game and start to think to yourself, which of these sets are going to be ones that I can easily finagle and are going to be easy for me to proc? For example, are you good at light and heavy attack weaving? If you're not, pick sets that don't require you to do so. There's nothing that says that you have to run the best of the best PvE builds, and it's going to be better for you in the long run if you pick sets that are easy for you to keep procced when it comes to just running any types of content. And as always, we have our final thoughts. There are always different things that you can tweak in the Elder Scrolls Online when it comes to just trying out something a little bit different. You can change those enchantments, you can change sets, attributes, race, consumables, Mundus stones, playstyles, how your buttons are mapped. You can change so many different things that it is overwhelming, and I know. That's why I wanted to put these in order of what I think are going to be the changes that you should do first versus ones that you should do last. But the nice thing is we're going to make this bad boy into a series. So this is just a general overview, and I want you to put your builds in the comments below. You can also send me messages on Discord. Discord's also below. You can send me screenshots of the build. You can send me videos of issues you're having, whether it's trying to kill players, trying to complete arenas, and we could talk about different sets, alternatives when it comes to your specific situation, because mine is very specific to one specific set. Some people might have a ton of different issues with different builds, and we can break those down and have a great discussion that other people can learn from. So thank you guys so much again for watching this brand new series. We're getting ready to head into Grey Host here before I go to work later. Unfortunately, your boy works at 10 p.m. tonight. So thank you guys so much again for watching. I'm going to post this how to fix inside my Discord, as well as obviously the video will be up So if there's anything that you can think, you have any questions, thoughts, suggestions, ideas, put them in the comments below. As always, we're doing our 3 giveaway drawings. All you need to do to enter is be subscribed. We're less than 10 subscribers away from our next subscriber goal. Make sure you hit the like and the comment button. Just by leaving a like and a comment, you really help the video. And the third thing is look for hidden word be flashed upon the screen. We always hide 1 hidden word at minimum per month on one of the videos posted. So thank you guys one last time. Have a fantastic Saturday, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jakeclips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.